7 daughters, 1 mother, left to die in a nursing home until they learned the truth. Subscribe for stories of justice, betrayal, and the consequences of taking parents for granted. They thought she was just a burden, a tired old woman at 72, no longer useful, forgotten by life. One by one, 7 daughters signed the papers, placing their own mother in a cold nursing home, where silence became her only companion. They had their reasons, they said. They were too busy with their careers. Their houses were too small. Their lives were too complicated. She'd understand, they told themselves. She always understood everything. They visited once, the day they dropped her off. Then weeks turned to months, and the calls stopped coming. The visits never resumed. Eleanor Mitchell, 72 years old, sat in room 237 of Pinewood Care Facility, waiting for adult daughters who never came. But what those 7 daughters didn't know was that their mother, still sharp, still capable, still very much alive, had spent her entire life building something they would never be able to destroy: dignity, character, and a plan. I'm Sarah Chen, and I was Eleanor's caregiver for the final 18 months of her life. I held her hand when no one else showed up. I listened to her stories when her daughters had stopped calling. I was there when she took her last breath, alone except for me. And weeks later, when the will was read, the truth fell like lightning. The mother they'd abandoned had left her entire estate, $2.4 million, not to her 7 adult daughters, but to me, the caregiver, the stranger who became family. That day, 7 daughters learned too late. The woman they called useless had taught them one final lesson: true love cannot be bought, inherited, or taken for granted. Chapter 1. The Abandonment. When 7 adult daughters forgot the woman who gave them everything. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 42 years old, and I work as a caregiver at Pinewood Care Facility in Atlanta, Georgia. 3 months ago, I inherited $2.4 million from a patient I cared for during the final 18 months of her life. Her name was Eleanor Mitchell. She was only 72 years old, and she had 7 adult daughters, all successful, all wealthy, all too busy to care for their aging mother. This is the story of how those 7 daughters abandoned their mother in a nursing home, convinced she was no longer useful, and how they learned, too late, that their mother's final act would be one of perfect justice. I'll never forget the day Eleanor arrived at Pinewood. Our first día record, it was a cold Tuesday morning in September 2 years ago. I was working the early shift when I saw a group of well-dressed women in the lobby, surrounding a woman in a wheelchair. The woman in the wheelchair wasn't frail or confused. She was alert, neatly dressed in a cardigan and slacks, with silver hair styled carefully. She looked healthy for 72, but her eyes looked defeated, like she already knew what was coming. The 7 women, her daughters, I'd learn, were talking among themselves, barely making eye contact with their mother. "We need to get this done quickly. I have a conference call at 11, one said, checking her Apple Watch. "Did everyone sign the admission papers?" another asked impatiently. "Yes, we all signed. Let's just get her settled so we can go." I approached them with my professional smile. "Good morning. I'm Sarah, one of the caregivers here. You must be the Mitchell family?" The eldest daughter, I'd learn her name was Catherine, nodded curtly. "Yes, this is our mother, Eleanor. We're checking her in today." I looked at Eleanor. She was staring at her lap, hands folded, silent, but I could see tension in her jaw. This wasn't a confused elderly woman. This was someone who understood exactly what was happening and was trying to maintain dignity. "Mrs. Mitchell," I said gently, "welcome to Pinewood. I'm here to help make your transition as comfortable as possible." She looked up at me, and I saw intelligence in those eyes, and deep sadness. But she forced a gracious smile. "Thank you, dear. That's very kind." Catherine handed me a folder. "Here's all her medical information, insurance papers, everything you need. We've paid for 6 months up front. If you need to reach us, our contact information is in there." "Will you be visiting regularly?" I asked. It was a standard question. We liked to know what kind of family support our residents had. The daughters exchanged glances. Catherine answered smoothly, "We'll visit when we can, but we all have demanding careers and families of our own. Mother understands." What I understood was that they were already distancing themselves, already preparing to forget. "Actually," Eleanor spoke up, her voice clear and firm, "I don't understand. I'm 72, not 92. I'm perfectly capable of living independently. Mom, we've been through this, another daughter interrupted. After your fall last month, it's not safe for you to live alone anymore. It was a minor fall. I twisted my ankle, which proves you need supervised care, Catherine said, her tone brooking no argument. This is for your own good. After the paperwork was done, the daughters each gave Eleanor a quick hug, the kind you give someone at a business function, not your mother. We'll call you Mom, one said. Try to participate in the activities here, another said. The staff will take good care of you, a third said, already moving toward the door. Eleanor nodded at each platitude, maintaining her composure, but I could see her hands trembling slightly, and then they left. All 7 of them, walking briskly out of that facility, and, as it would turn out of their mother's life. I wheeled Eleanor to her room, 237, a small single room with a window overlooking the parking lot. Mrs. Mitchell, let me help you get settled. Please call me Eleanor. Her voice was steady, but I noticed her eyes were glistening. And I can walk perfectly fine. The wheelchair was their idea, not mine. She stood up from the wheelchair with no difficulty whatsoever. I realized then that the fall her daughters referenced had been vastly exaggerated, probably as justification for what they were doing. As I helped Eleanor unpack the few belongings her daughters had brought, some clothes, photographs, books, her laptop, Eleanor spoke quietly. They're successful women. I'm very proud of them. Catherine runs her own consulting firm. Victoria is a cardiac surgeon. Margaret owns 3 dental practices. Diana is a judge. Lillian is a software executive. Rose is a partner at an investment bank. And Julia, my youngest, she's a tenured professor at Emory. That's impressive, I said. You must have worked hard to help them achieve so much. I did. Eleanor's voice was matter of fact. After my husband died when they were young, Catherine was 15, Julia was only 3. I raised them alone, worked as a nurse, took extra shifts, made sure they all got through college and graduate school. Some of them had student loans, but I helped pay those off over the years. She paused, arranging photographs on her nightstand. 7 college graduations, 7 weddings, grandchildren of various ages. I always told them education and career were important, that they should be independent, financially secure, able to take care of themselves. She smiled sadly. I suppose they learned that lesson too well. They're all so independent they don't need anyone, not even their mother. That first week, Eleanor tried to adjust. She attended the activities Pinewood offered: bingo, movie nights, exercise classes. She was friendly with other residents. She kept herself busy. But every day during visiting hours, she'd sit by her window, watching the parking lot, hoping to see one of her daughter's cars. They didn't come. She kept her cell phone charged and nearby, checking it constantly for calls or texts. They didn't call much. Maybe a brief text every few days. Hope you're settling in okay, Mom. By the second week, I noticed Eleanor had stopped sitting by the window during visiting hours. She'd stopped checking her phone as frequently. By the third week, she'd stopped mentioning her daughters unless I asked, "Have you heard from your family, Eleanor?" "Oh, they're very busy. Important careers. I don't want to bother them." But I could see it was eating at her. This wasn't an elderly woman with dementia who forgot she had children. This was a sharp, intelligent, capable woman who was acutely aware she'd been abandoned. I started spending extra time with Eleanor during my shifts. Officially, I was there to help with her daily needs. Though at 72 and healthy, she needed very little. But I found myself staying longer, just talking with her. Eleanor was fascinating. She'd been a nurse for 40 years. Emergency room, intensive care, she'd seen everything. She had stories about medical advances she'd witnessed, about saving lives, about the evolution of healthcare. She was also remarkably well-read, interested in current events, sharp as a tack mentally. "You know what's ridiculous?" she said one afternoon about a month after arriving. "I'm 72. My mother lived to 94. I could have 20 more years. I'm healthy. My blood pressure is perfect. My cholesterol is fine. I walk 2 miles a day on the treadmill. I don't need to be here." "Why did your daughters insist on it?" I asked carefully. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm inconvenient. After their father died, I was useful. I worked. I provided. I helped them through school. But now, I'm retired. I'm not contributing financially to their lives. I'm just a reminder that they have a mother. And that's inconvenient when you're building empires. She said it without bitterness, just sadness. They also mentioned my house, she continued. Several times. It's in Buckhead, fully paid off, worth about $900,000. They've been suggesting I sell it for months. Said I didn't need all that space, that the money would be better used for my care. But you didn't want to sell. It's my home. I lived there for 40 years. Raised my girls there. Every room has memories. But they made it clear. Either I sell it and move into assisted living, or they'd pursue guardianship and make the decision for me. I was shocked. Guardianship? But you're completely competent. That wouldn't matter. With the right lawyers and doctors, anyone can be declared incapacitated. Catherine made that very clear. Eleanor looked at me directly. So I agreed to come here voluntarily, to avoid a legal battle I couldn't afford and wouldn't win. The 2 months passed. The daughters called occasionally, maybe once a week. Brief conversations that Eleanor would replay in her mind for days afterward. They never visited. Catherine called today, Eleanor would tell me with forced brightness. She said her firm just landed a major contract. That's nice, I'd say, biting my tongue. Because what I wanted to say was, why doesn't she land a visit to see her mother? 3 months in, Eleanor's blood pressure started going up. The doctor prescribed medication. Stress-induced hypertension, he said. I knew what the stress was. Abandonment. Loneliness. The heartbreak of realizing your children don't care enough to show up. I called all 7 daughters, left messages, sent texts, explained that their mother's health was being affected by stress and isolation. Victoria, the cardiac surgeon, called back. I'm sure the facility is managing her blood pressure appropriately. Just make sure she takes her medications. Dr. Mitchell, your mother doesn't need medication as much as she needs family. She needs her daughters to visit. I appreciate your concern, but we're all very busy. Mother understands. Does she? Because from where I'm standing, she's heartbroken. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? Victoria's voice was cool. Mother is being well cared for in an excellent facility. She has activities, meals, medical supervision, everything she needs. Except her family. But I didn't say that. What was the point? 4 months in, I started spending even more time with Eleanor. My shifts were officially 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., but I'd often stay until 6 or 7, just sitting with Eleanor. We'd play chess. She was excellent. We'd discuss books. We'd watch Jeopardy together and compete on answers. My husband Michael noticed. You're getting attached, he said one evening when I came home late again. She has no one else, I said. Her daughters have completely abandoned her and she's too proud to complain. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not. But I can't just leave her alone. She's only 72, Michael. She could live another 20 years. Can you imagine living 20 years knowing your children don't care enough to visit? 6 months after Eleanor arrived at Pinewood, something changed in her. She stopped waiting for her daughters to call. She stopped making excuses for them. Sarah, I need to ask you something, she said one afternoon. Would you be willing to be my healthcare proxy and power of attorney? Your healthcare proxy? Eleanor, shouldn't one of your daughters? They're too busy. And frankly, I don't trust them. If I become incapacitated, I want someone who actually cares about my well-being making decisions, not someone who's worried about inheritance or inconvenience. I agreed. We filled out the paperwork, had it notarized. Eleanor also met with a lawyer around that time. He came to the facility several times. She was updating her estate plan, she told me. Around month 8, I noticed Eleanor seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. I've made peace with it, she told me one day. My daughters are who they are. I can't change them. I can't make them care. But I can control what happens with everything I've built. What do you mean? She smiled mysteriously. You'll see. Eventually. I saw. Or by month 10, the daughters had stopped calling regularly. Maybe once every 2 weeks, if that. Eleanor stopped mentioning them. She'd created a new life at Pinewood. Friends among the residents, routines she enjoyed, and most importantly, me. We'd become genuinely close. You're like the daughter I wish I'd raised, she told me one evening. Present, kind, caring because you want to, not because you're obligated. Eleanor, your daughters love you. No, Sarah, they don't. At least not in any way that matters. Love requires presence. Love requires effort. Love requires showing up, and they've done none of that. She wasn't bitter when she said it, just honest. She'd accepted the truth. Around month 12, Eleanor's health started declining. Not dramatically. She was still active, still sharp mentally. But little things. Her blood pressure remained high despite medication. She developed some heart palpitations. The stress of abandonment was taking a physical toll. I called the daughters again. Your mother would benefit from seeing you. Her health is being affected by the isolation. This time, 3 of them came. Catherine, Victoria, and Margaret. They showed up on a Saturday, spent 45 minutes with Eleanor, took some photos, and left. Eleanor didn't cry after they left this time. She just looked at me and said, "They came to document that they visited. For their consciences. Or perhaps for the will. But they didn't come for me." She was right. And it broke my heart. The month 15. Eleanor developed pneumonia. She was hospitalized for a week. I visited her every day. Her daughters, 2 of them came once. Stayed 20 minutes. When Eleanor was discharged back to Pinewood, she pulled me aside. "Sarah, I want to show you something." She opened her laptop and pulled up a document. It was her will. "I've left everything to you. The house, my savings, about $1.2 million, my investment accounts, another $300,000, my life insurance, $200,000, all of it. Approximately $2.6 million total." I was stunned. "Eleanor, I can't accept that. My daughters will receive $1 each. The minimum required to prevent them from contesting the will on grounds of being accidentally omitted." "Eleanor, I've also had 3 psychiatric evaluations done. All confirm I'm of sound mind. I've documented their lack of visits, their abandonment. My lawyer has notarized statements from Pinewood staff about their absence. If they try to contest, they'll lose, and they'll humiliate themselves publicly trying." "But why? Eleanor, I'm just your caregiver." "No, you're the daughter who showed up, who cared, who treated me like a person, not a burden. You earned this, Sarah, not through manipulation, but through simple human decency, something my actual daughters couldn't manage." The month 18, Eleanor caught the flu. It developed into pneumonia again. This time, her body couldn't fight it off. Her heart, weakened by stress and hypertension, gave out. I was there, holding her hand. I'd been there all night because I knew she was close and I didn't want her to die alone. Around 5 a.m., her breathing changed. The nurse came, but we both knew there was nothing to be done. Eleanor opened her eyes one last time, looked at me, squeezed my hand weakly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing up, for caring, for being what they should have been." And then she was gone. She was only 72 years old. She should have had 20 more years. Instead, she'd spent her last 18 months warehoused by daughters who couldn't be bothered to visit. I called the 7 daughters, told them their mother had passed. Their responses were variations of, "Oh, I see. Thank you for letting us know. We'll handle the arrangements." No tears, no real grief, just logistics. The funeral was 3 days later. All 7 daughters came, dressed in expensive black designer outfits, playing the part of grieving children. They even gave eulogies, talking about what a wonderful mother Eleanor had been, how much they'd learned from her, how much they'd miss her. I wanted to stand up and scream the truth, but Eleanor had asked me not to. "Let them have their performance," she'd said. "The truth will come out soon enough." After the funeral, Catherine approached me. "Thank you for taking care of our mother. We know she was in good hands." I just nodded, didn't trust myself to speak. They all left immediately after the funeral, didn't even stay for the reception. Chapter 2. The Revelation. When justice comes in the form of a will. 2 weeks after Eleanor's death, I received a call from a lawyer named Robert Ashford. "Ms. Chen, I'm the attorney handling Eleanor Mitchell's estate. I need you to come to my office for the reading of the will." "Me? Why would I need to be there?" "You're the primary beneficiary. Mrs. Mitchell left specific instructions that you be present, along with her 7 daughters." My stomach dropped. This was really happening. The will reading was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. When I arrived at Robert Ashford's office in downtown Atlanta, the 7 Mitchell daughters were already there, sitting in leather chairs, looking impatient and entitled. They glanced at me when I walked in. Catherine frowned. Why is the caregiver here? Robert Ashford, a distinguished man in his late 50s, gestured to an empty chair. Ms. Chen is here because she's named prominently in the will. Please, have a seat. The daughters exchanged glances. I could practically see their thoughts. Did Mom leave her some small bequest? Maybe $10,000? That would be generous. Better not be more. Robert opened a folder and began reading the standard legal language. Then he got to the substance. This is the last will and testament of Eleanor Grace Mitchell, executed 12 months ago and updated 6 months before her death. He continued. To my daughters Catherine, Victoria, Margaret, Diana, Lillian, Rose, and Julia, I leave the following: my love, my prayers, and my hope that they will learn from their mistakes before it's too late with their own children. The daughters smiled slightly, thinking this was preface to their inheritances. Robert continued. I also leave each of my 7 daughters the sum of $1. This is the minimum bequest required by law to prevent them from claiming to have been accidentally omitted from this will. The room exploded. What? Catherine jumped to her feet. $1? This is absurd. This can't be legal, Victoria shouted. Our mother was clearly not in her right mind, Margaret began. Robert held up his hand. Please, let me finish. He continued reading. The remainder of my estate, including my home in Buckhead, currently valued at $900,000, my savings and checking accounts, totaling $1.2 million, my investment and retirement accounts, totaling $300,000, and my life insurance policy, valued at $200,000, for a total estate value of approximately $2. $6 million. I leave entirely to Sarah Chen, who showed me more love, care, and daughterly devotion in 18 months than my 7 biological daughters showed me in 72 years. Absolute stunned silence. Then chaos. All 7 daughters erupted simultaneously, shouting, demanding explanations, accusing me of manipulation. I sat frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. $2.6 million. Eleanor had left me everything. Robert raised his voice. Ladies, please sit down, there's more. Batsak. He pulled out another document. Mrs. Mitchell also left a video statement to be played at this reading. If you'll all take your seats. The daughters sat, faces red with fury and shock. Robert turned on a screen on the wall. Eleanor's face appeared. This had been recorded maybe 6 months ago, when she was still relatively healthy. Her voice was clear, strong, commanding. To my 7 daughters, if you're watching this, then I've died, and you've just learned that I've left my entire estate to Sarah Chen. I imagine you're shocked, outraged. You probably think I lost my mind, but I assure you, I was examined by 3 separate psychiatrists, all of whom confirmed I was completely lucid and of sound mind when I made this decision. Let me explain why. I'm 72 years old in this video. I could live another 20 years. My mother lived to 94. I'm not elderly. I'm not senile. I'm not confused. I'm a woman in the 3rd act of her life who was discarded by her children because I was no longer useful to them. For 18 months, I lived at Pinewood Care Facility. Do you know how many times my 7 daughters visited me during those 18 months? Catherine, twice. Victoria, twice. Margaret, once. Diana, once. Lillian, once. Rose, 0 times. Julia, 0 times. 8 visits total in 18 months. And most of those were when I was actively dying, and you were worried about the will. Do you know how many times Sarah visited me? Every single day that she worked. And many days she stayed hours beyond her shift just to keep me company. You, my daughters, stopped calling regularly after the first few months. You forgot my 72nd birthday. You didn't visit for Christmas, just sent a generic gift basket. When I was hospitalized with pneumonia twice, most of you didn't even come to the hospital. Sarah was there, both times, holding my hand, making sure I wasn't alone. Let me tell you what I remember about raising you 7. I remember working double shifts as a nurse so you could have dance lessons, music lessons, sports equipment. I remember going without so you could have name-brand clothes and the latest technology. I remember helping you with college applications, driving you to interviews, supporting every dream you had. I remember sacrificing my own comfort, my own retirement savings, my own desires, so that you could build the lives you wanted. And when I finally needed you, not your money, not your sacrifice, just your presence, you were too busy. Too busy with your important careers, too busy with your own families, too busy to spend one afternoon a month with your mother. But Sarah wasn't too busy. Sarah, who owed me nothing beyond her paycheck, chose to treat me with dignity, respect, and love. So I'm leaving her what you clearly didn't value: my estate. This is not punishment, though I imagine it feels like it. This is justice. This is the natural consequence of your choices. You chose careers over family, success over presence, convenience over love. And now you're inheriting the result of those choices: nothing. I want to be clear. I loved you. I still love you. But love without action is just a word. Love requires showing up. Love requires effort. Love requires sacrifice. I gave you that kind of love for decades. You couldn't give it to me for 18 months. Sarah did, and she's being rewarded for it. I also want you to know, I documented everything. Mr. Ashford has visitor logs from Pinewood showing your absence. He has phone records showing how rarely you called. He has statements from staff members about your neglect. He has 3 psychiatric evaluations confirming my mental competence. If you try to contest this will, you will lose. And you will humiliate yourselves publicly in the process. The media will have a field day with the story of 7 successful daughters who abandoned their mother and then tried to steal the inheritance she left to her devoted caregiver. So I suggest you accept this outcome with whatever grace you can muster. Take your $7, buy yourselves coffee, and think about what you've lost. Not the money, though that's significant, but the relationship, the final years you could have had with me, the memories you could have made, the love you could have given and received. You can't buy that back now. It's gone. My final piece of advice to you: don't do this to your own children. Be present in their lives. Show up. Because one day, you'll be 72, and you'll need them. And if you've taught them what you taught me, that success matters more than family, they'll abandon you the same way you abandoned me. Sarah, if you're watching this, thank you for everything. Use this money wisely. Help others. Live well. And remember, you earned this not through manipulation, but through simple human kindness. To my daughters, I hope this teaches you something. But even if it doesn't, at least Sarah will be taken care of. Goodbye, my girls. I wish things had been different. Your mother, Eleanor Mitchell. The video ended. Silence filled the room. I was crying. The daughters sat in stunned, furious silence. Finally, Catherine spoke, her voice shaking with rage. We're contesting this. Our mother was clearly manipulated. You can try, Robert interrupted calmly. But you'll lose. Mrs. Mitchell anticipated this reaction. As she mentioned, we have extensive documentation, 3 psychiatric evaluations from different doctors, all confirming complete mental competence, visitor logs proving your absence, staff statements, phone records, everything. He pulled out another document. She also left this, a notarized statement detailing the emotional neglect and abandonment she experienced. If you contest, I'm instructed to release this to the media, along with the video you just watched. The threat was clear. Contest and become the public face of elder abandonment. Victoria turned to me, her voice venomous. You manipulated a lonely old woman. Your mother was 72, not 92. I shot back, finding my voice. She wasn't confused or lonely in the pathetic sense. She was sharp, intelligent, and fully aware that her daughters had discarded her. I didn't manipulate anyone. I just showed up, something you couldn't be bothered to do. We had lives, careers, responsibilities. Diana stood up. So do I. I have a full-time job and a family. But I still found time to visit your mother every single day, because that's what decent people do. This is theft, Margaret began. No, I said firmly. This is consequences. Your mother gave you everything for 70 years. You couldn't give her 18 months. You thought she'd always be there, always understand, always accept your excuses. And she did, until she didn't. Catherine stepped toward me. You will not see a penny of that money. We will fight this until what? Robert interrupted. Until you bankrupt yourselves in legal fees? Until every newspaper in Atlanta runs the story? Until your professional reputations are destroyed? Mrs. Mitchell was very thorough. She made this will contest-proof specifically because she knew you'd react this way. He looked at each daughter in turn. Your mother was 72 years old. She could have lived another 20 years. Instead, she died of a broken heart at 74, 18 months after you warehoused her in a facility and forgot about her. You should be ashamed. But instead, you're angry about money. One by one, the daughters left. Some stormed out. Some left quietly. Catherine was last. She paused at the door, glaring at me. I hope you enjoy what you stole. I didn't steal anything, I said quietly. Your mother gave it to me. Because I earned it by doing something very simple. I showed up. Epilogue. 3 months later, the estate cleared probate. No contest was filed. The daughters' lawyers advised them they'd lose spectacularly and publicly. $2.6 million transferred into accounts in my name. It still doesn't feel real. None of the daughters ever contacted me again. I heard through Pinewood staff that the 7 of them had a major falling out afterward, blaming each other for not visiting enough, not calling enough, not preventing this outcome. The irony wasn't lost on me. They finally cared about their mother after she was gone, and they'd lost their inheritance. I used part of Eleanor's estate to start a nonprofit called Eleanor's Promise. It provides support for caregivers and creates programs to combat elder isolation. We also fund visits and activities for seniors whose families have abandoned them, because Eleanor taught me something crucial. At 72, 82, or 92, people deserve to be valued, to be visited, to be loved. I still work at Pinewood, though financially I don't need to, but there are so many people like Eleanor, capable, intelligent, aware, who've been discarded by families who see them as burdens rather than blessings. And I show up for them, every day, because that's what Eleanor taught me matters most. 7 daughters, 1 mother, left to waste away in a nursing home at only 72 years old. They thought she was useless, powerless, someone to be managed and forgotten. They were wrong. Eleanor Mitchell's final act was a masterclass in justice, rewarding the person who showed up and teaching her daughters that success means nothing if you forget how to love. They learned the truth too late, but maybe, just maybe, they'll treat their own aging differently. Maybe they'll show up for their children when the time comes, or maybe they won't learn at all. Either way, Eleanor's legacy lives on, not in the money she left me, but in the lesson she taught. Presence matters more than presence. Showing up matters more than success. And love that doesn't show up isn't really love at all.